What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So with this week winding down, there's a lot of anticipation and hype around a potential Nintendo Direct announcement for next week. And in fact, based on some rumors and reports now circulating, it looks like we could be seeing that announcement sooner rather than later, as well as the potential for a pretty massive shadow drop from Nintendo, which we'll go over all of that here today. Also, we are going to be taking a look at Sony's most recent financial report that showcases some massive gains for the PlayStation 5, with that system absolutely back on track. And we'll also be talking about Xbox and the Coalition with their next big project that you're probably going to be able to guess. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with a game from Omega Force, EA, and Koei Tecmo. That's Wild Hearts. It's out here in a couple of weeks, and it's the game that showed up and looked a lot like Monster Hunter. Well, there was a Reddit AMA that took place with the developers, and they answered several questions, one of which made me laugh a little bit, but also made me kind of sad because that's where we are with games currently. But take a look at this headline here. This from Push Square, saying Wild Hearts confirms free post-launch content, no microtransactions, and can be played offline. That was the one that got me. That's where we are now with, after obviously we talked about Redfall being always online, even for single player. This is a question that just seems to be coming up across the board for any of these Ask Me Anythings or any of that. Can it be played offline without an internet connection? This one can. It appears that the post-launch content will be following a similar structure to what we've seen from Capcom with Monster Hunter, and the fact that there's no microtransactions, but EA is publishing it, that's a win right there. But the other thing to keep in mind with this game, it's coming out February 17th, but they will be taking advantage of that EA Play trial period. So if you have that EA subscription, you'll be able to try the game out for 10 hours, 3 days early, starting on the 14th. And if you have Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, you already have that EA subscription, so you can just try out Wild Hearts a couple days early for 10 hours to see what you think about it. Also, we do have a pretty big update heading to the PlayStation 5, as it is now in the beta program for the firmware, and take a look at some of these features. We have Discord voice chat, which, according to people who have tried it out, you still need to use that, like a phone app, to push the Discord call over. That's how the Xbox side started, and then they worked that out to where it was all done on the console. So I expect a similar timeline here for the PlayStation to get to that point. VRR support for 1440p, manually upload game captures to the PlayStation app, and easily access your PS4 save data on the PS5. If you remember, it was kind of weird for certain games where you had a PS4 option in the menu, and you had to have the PS4 version installed to access it to move the save data over. Seems they've worked to streamline that a bit here. This is currently in the beta firmware program, so if you've opted in, you can update your PS5 and take advantage of these different features. Otherwise, the full retail firmware that most people are on will probably see this update get pushed out in a month or two. Oh, and it does look like Nintendo is reintroducing their voucher program, which I know at least in the North American region, it just went away, and now it looks like it's come back. I think in some regions it's basically always been available, but essentially, you can see this. You pay out $100 to save $20. So $100 gets you 2 of these game vouchers that you can then redeem for any of the games that are on their list here digitally. All right, so it would be going through the eShop, but you can see all the first-party games for the most part are here. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, Fire Emblem Engage, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, Bayonetta 3, Mario Strikers. The list goes on and on and on here. And the idea is, all right, let's say you're going to pay this $100 out. You have this credit on your account. You'll save $20. That's essentially it. But you have to keep in mind, it has to be on the list that they have provided here, and there's no guarantee necessarily that Tears of the Kingdom, just for an example, would go on here day one. So just keep that in mind. If you were thinking about buying any of these games, though, now, digitally, you might as well take advantage of the voucher program and save yourself $20. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Sony and their most recent financial report. This is for Q3, so it covers October, November, and December, the big holiday quarter for 2022, and then comparing it to the holiday quarter for 2021. And these were some very impressive results from Sony, mostly because it shows that the PlayStation 5 is much more plentiful now, which is great for anyone who's been looking for a PlayStation 5 system and trying to navigate the secondhand market that was ridiculous there early on. Looks like that's coming to an end. We can see this posted up over on Install Base Forum with many of the slides that Sony had provided, and we'll start at the top here with their overall sales. up 53% over 2021. Very impressive stuff here. Now they credit an increase in sales of hardware, which, yeah, I mean, they had that alongside of big first-party titles like God of War Ragnarok that certainly helped out. We know the sales of that game already crossing the 11 million unit mark. Operating income, not as high, 25%. However, it's important to note that they are including acquisitions, including Bungie, which that was $3 billion. So the fact that you still include a massive acquisition like that as an expense and a cost against those sales, and you still come up with 25% increase in your operating income, yeah, it was a pretty good holiday for them. The part that really seemed to impress a lot of people were the amount of PlayStation 5s they were able to push out for the holiday quarter, coming in at 7.1 million units. That compared to the previous year, 3.9. So yeah, a significant jump overall. Them now coming in above 12 million units sold for the first 3 quarters that they have here. They still have a 4th quarter on the books. That'll be running until the end of March. And get this, they actually pushed their overall forecast up from 18 million to 19 million. So by my math, they still believe in this 4th quarter that they will sell at least another 6 million PlayStation 5 systems, which is very impressive, as what they need to do now is work to continue to stock and push units out there for sale, because the demand does seem to still be very high for the PlayStation 5, them now coming in over 32 million systems sold. And we know Sony typically gets over 100 million sold for their console generations without too much issue. The PS3 was the lone standout. Otherwise, PS1, 2, and PS4, no issues there. So they still have a ways to go, and they're going to want to catch up to the PlayStation 4 as they are still trailing behind it by roughly 5.5 million units or so. As for their network side, PlayStation Plus members were up from Q2 of this fiscal year by about 1 million overall, but they're still technically down from the previous year. And remember, when they did the whole revision of their PlayStation Plus lineup where they went to the 3 tiers, they lost members, but they gained revenue, which means, yeah, some people just opted out of it completely, but more people than not moved up in price, so that they ended up making more revenue off of less subscriptions. So as this number continues to climb, which we kind of assume it will just over time, they will end up in a much better place after that overall 3-tiered system that they introduced. And then their monthly active users touching 112 million, which is, I mean, that's higher than anything they have reported at this point. So yeah, it was a very good quarter for Sony. I mean, having an over 50% jump in just gross sales, 25% in operating income, and seeing that number of PS5s get out there to stores. And it seems like they're very confident going forward to raise their forecast. Essentially, they don't have any problem getting stock anymore, which is great news for everyone. Anyone who wants to go out and just get a PS5, it seems like you're going to start seeing these show up in stores more and more, and that was actually the poll question that we'll take a look at later on. But yeah, it seems like Sony right now back on track with the PS5, and I wouldn't be shocked if they just continued at a pace to catch up to the PlayStation 4, probably in about 1.5 years, and then who knows from there with the PS5. Next up, let's talk about the Coalition and Xbox. The Coalition, of course, well known for their work on Gears of War 4, Gears of War Ultimate, Gears 5, Gears Tactics. I mean, they basically took over the Gears series after Gears of War 3 and Gears of War Judgment, but they've been off kind of doing their like smaller projects and really just working on Unreal Engines. They even worked on that Matrix demo that had been released to showcase some of the visuals that were attainable on the PS5 and the Xbox series. Well, now it appears they themselves are back on track with what else but Gears of War 6, or Gears 6. That's what we're going to be calling it, of course, going forward. And this was relayed to everyone from Jeff Grubb over on his podcast. We can see this transcribed by VGC from Jeff Grubb saying they have canceled that smaller project as well as another project. So there have been 2 games canceled there. This was all reflected in the layoffs that happened at Microsoft, which did hit the Coalition a little bit. The studio is now going to move on fully to Gears 6. I say now it has likely moved on to Gears 6 in full over the course of the last year, but definitely that will be their next game. And I'll admit, I was a little disappointed to hear that they decided to cancel the smaller projects, although I guess you could make the case that the smaller projects really existed for them to continue working on different things with Unreal Engine, probably Unreal Engine 5, just so they can continue to hone their craft, which people have called them the masters of Unreal at this point. And the fact that they work so closely with Epic Games, it's their engine, and Coalition is right there with them, it seems. I guess now it's like, hey, let's just go for Gear 6. I would have liked to have seen the Coalition try something new. I did like Gears 5, but we are up to the 5th one there, and you figure, okay, maybe the Coalition can try something brand new and see what they can come up with. But now it seems like full speed ahead on Gears 6. Something tells me, though, it's still going to be a little while before we see this game, especially if they just went on full-on development over this last year. Could be something maybe we find out more about in 2024 with a 2025 release. I guess we'll see. Next up, let's talk about Nintendo and in this Direct that I feel like we've been talking about for a while now, and that just happens when a new year starts up. We start trying to pinpoint and talk about the Nintendo Direct that's coming up and what Nintendo will reveal to lay out plans for at least the first half of the year. Well, all of a sudden yesterday, everyone was talking about a Direct. There were rumors and reports dropping all over the place, and even some talk of a big shadow drop that could be upcoming thanks to some marketing material at a retailer. Well, first, let's start with the reports around this Direct. We can see this posted up by Nintendo Everything. Once again, coming from Jeff Grubb, this on his Nintendogs podcast, says everything I'm hearing, and it's all just sort of reiterating it. It continues to be the week of February 6th. Over and over and over again, every little detail I get is basically a week from now, we should begin hearing about all this stuff. I think it's probably late in the week, so if February 6th is going to come around and we're not going to hear about it, and people are going to freak out like there's nothing happening, first of all, I'm not guaranteeing it for that week. I'm just saying that that's what everything is sort of pointing to right now. To go a little bit further, Ember on Culture, this got sent to me all over the place on Twitter. They just said a Nintendo Direct is imminent. Now, I was not familiar with this person, but apparently they are well known for leaking all kinds of stuff with Marvel. I don't really know how they would know a Direct is imminent unless there's something Marvel related in there. Hey, you know what? Ultimate Alliance 3, that was a surprise, so I guess you can never count out any of those kind of surprises with Nintendo and all this. But the other thing has to do with Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp. We've seen the listings start to appear again on different retailers. And now it appears that a Reddit user who showed up just on the Gaming Leaks board said that they have started to receive different marketing materials, specifically a standee at a Walmart, saying that they can put it out February 10th, and it just says available now. They also received a display for Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, so I will say this with that Reddit post, a little sketchy, I will say. I mean, there's not any proof when it comes to that. You feel like, I guess they could have taken a picture of it or something and posted that, but I don't know, might have gotten them in trouble or something. Some other people chimed in the comments and said, well, it doesn't necessarily line up with how marketing works at my store because it doesn't all show up with produce or whatever truck it was on. So that one, definitely a grain of salt there. I will say it would be kind of cool to see Advance Wars just get shadow dropped, but I still feel like Nintendo would want to give at least a month or two to kind of get store stocked with the retail side of things, especially since they had the game ready to ship out to retailers and warehouses, and they had to pull it all back apparently after they decided to delay it. So I'm kind of lining up maybe late March or just April for Advanced Wars to come out, making it an entire year delay for that one. And I know I was joking around about there being a Direct next week, but it was just that. I don't have any sources or anything on that one. Just kind of speculating and thinking about it. Definitely wouldn't be on, I don't know, like the 8th or 9th, depending on your time zone next week. Nothing like that. But we are all expecting a Direct. I don't think it's shocking to hear that there potentially could be one next week or the week after. Basically, at some point in February, yes, Nintendo's going to start talking about what they have lined up for 2023, at least the first half, hoping for something with Advanced Wars, a release date, and then a look at Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, because we are getting closer and closer to that release. We're almost, 3 months away now? You figure Nintendo wants to start talking about what's going to be their last major release for the year. So we'll see what happens. Maybe a Monday or Tuesday announcement for a Direct later on next week. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about the Famitsu sales charts from last week. This, of course, covers all the retail sales in Japan on a week-to-week basis. And we just talked about how massive of a quarter PlayStation had and how they're looking to accomplish whatever 6 million sold in this current quarter. Well, wait till you see the sales charts here in Japan. First, let's start with the games, though. With the top 10, we have Story of Seasons topping the chart here, 40,759. Then we have Pokemon Scarlet and Violet there at 237,265. Forspoken on the PS5, 29,055. That feels kind of low for a big title from Square Enix. Then we have Fire Emblem there at 4, Splatoon 3, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Disgaea 7 at 10,359. So that seems really low too for Disgaea. Then we have Minecraft, Nintendo Switch Sports, and Momotaro Densetsu. Moving over to the hardware, the PS5 was at the top, 62,908. I mean, you can see Sony going all out with stock right now, and these are numbers we can see in Japan, so you can only imagine what kind of stock they're pushing out in places like in Europe or the US. So yeah, a lot of stock right now heading out from Sony. Then we have the Switch below that, 51,108, the Xbox Series 1,265, the PS4 just over 1,000, and the 3DS at 74. So definitely a strange week because it's not typical that you see the Switch in second place on the hardware charts in Japan, and it very well could flip back around next week, but something tells me that if Sony can continue to push stock out to Japan and have some of these releases lined up like a Final Fantasy 16 and a Spider-Man 2 they continue to market there in stores, I think Sony could really move a lot of units in Japan, and seeing as how they do have some ground to make up with the PS4, I think they're being very aggressive currently with their stock situation and production. So it's no wonder that they're pushing their forecast up when you see numbers like these. Forspoken, probably the biggest disappointment of the week, although Disgaea 7 kind of disappointing there as well. But Forspoken coming in under 30,000 sold physically in Japan, and what we've seen Square's expectations being for some of the other departments who I have a feeling they're not going to be excited about some of the sales that they have currently with Forspoken, but I guess we'll see the next time Square has to talk about some of their financials. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're going to take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday. We're asked, have you come across a PS5 in a retail store yet? Look at this, 53% no, but 47% say yes. I feel like if I had this poll up a little over 2 years into the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One life, this would have been 95%, 96% yes. So we're still working our way up there, and they're still trying to get stock back in the stores. But the fact that we're at least to this point, whereas if I ran this poll a year and a half ago and it would have been like 10% saying yes, maybe even less than that, they've at least made some progress, and I'm very hopeful that even a year from now, this is closer to like 80 or 90% as they push more and more systems out there. Also, real quick, it is pretty funny to go through eBay now and see some of those pictures of people that stocked up on PS5 systems with them stacked all the way up to the ceiling, and they're trying to sell them now at cost, and that's before eBay takes their cut. So it looks like some of the resellers that held out a little too long might be on the losing end of this one. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Nasir saying, I'm one of those who have never played a game of the Metal Gear series, but are waiting for a potential remake or remaster. All right, Konami had to cut their overall forecast down by nearly half with their revenue, and Konami, I'm telling you, you're sitting on a gold mine right now with Metal Gear, because while I remember it fondly from like more than a decade ago at this point, there are a lot of people who have just never played it. And I think from what we're seeing with Last of Us, I think Metal Gear could also be a pretty good adaptation to a TV series similar to Last of Us, right? Maybe a bit more action-oriented, of course, but I think they could make that work and then also release the remasters, a remake, and a whole new game in the series. Really, there's a lot of money that can be made there, and a lot of new people who have never played Metal Gear that would probably really like it if they at least had a way to buy it easily, or at least be exposed to the series in some way, even if that's just streaming it on Netflix or Amazon or HBO. So Konami, you gotta get on it. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here. Today was Nintendo and their potential direct coming up next week or just in February? What would you like to see there? And would you mind if Nintendo was showing off Advance Wars and they were like available right now? And then also, what about Sony and some of their impressive numbers from this recent financial quarter with the PS5 getting pushed out there in droves? Are you starting to see them show up in stores? Thanks guys for watching. Have a great weekend. I'll see you back here Monday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time for Newswave.